Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. First foremost, a GoFundMe account. You knew it was coming. You had to know everything. Everything now goes to a GoFundMe account. And in one day, Michael Cohen raised more than $120,000, and he didn't even have to sleep with Donald Trump. Look at that, 120 grand. All he had to do was have Lanny Davis slap up a GoFundMe page, and more than 2,000 people chipped in. Evidently, they're trying to raise $500,000. I guess the thought is that's what Lanny Davis's legal bills are going to cost. And on the GoFundMe page, they write on July 2nd, 2018, Michael Cohen declared his independence from Donald Trump and his commitment to tell the truth. On August 21st, Michael Cohen made the decision to take the legal responsibility and to continue his commitment to tell the truth. Michael decided to put his family and his country first. Now, Michael needs your help. He needs your financial help to pay his legal bills. The Michael Cohen Truth Fund. I'm sorry. This just gets more ridiculous by the day. The Truth Fund is a transparent trust account with all donations going to help Michael Cohen and his family as he goes forward on his journey to tell the truth about Donald Trump. The truth tour. And what we find out is part of the truth tour is that, according to Cohen, he was actually there when Junior Doofus spoke to the Marmalade Mussolini about the big June meeting with the Russian offering the goods on Hillary Clinton. Now, if you remember, during his Senate testimony, he said, I didn't know anything about it. Now telling a different story. Now, I guess this is the truth now. And this is what Trump's hoping for. Well, look, you muddied the waters by lying at the beginning, and now you're going to have this truth tour. I don't know. Who do you believe? Do you believe Michael Cohen, who's trying to save his skin, or Donald Trump, who's trying to save his skin? I don't believe anything that comes out of Trump's mouth, considering, a guy who lies as well, as frequently and as often and as well. I mean, give the guy credit. He is really a good liar. Honestly, truthfully, very, very good liar. Somebody who is, has no conscience when it comes to the so-called truth. And, I look at this and it's quite amusing in that the Donald actually went after him today. And in the way that he went after him was, you need a good lawyer. Don't hire Michael Cohen. And I guess that's supposed to be a shot. Now, what's been interesting is it's been the fallout from not just the Cohen guilty plea, but also from the Manafort guilty verdict. Some of the key players in this game, you had Mitch McConnell yesterday, who didn't even really talk about Cohen or Manafort. Instead, he talked about the possibility of pursuing sanctions against Russia for meddling in the 2018 elections, which I guess he said might not be taken up till October. And I'm like, why not wait till December? You'll have plenty of time, in December to take care of it. Why not? Why not wait till it's over? I mean, can we wait any longer? How about November 5th? Why don't we take it up on Monday the 5th? Just crazy. And then there's Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, who does the, I don't know. Lindsey's one of these guys who, whatever. He's kind of wishy-washy anyway. He said that thus far there have yet to be any charges or convictions for collusion with the Russian government by any member of the Trump campaign in 2016 election. It's important to let the process continue without interference, and I hope Mr. Mueller can conclude his investigation sooner rather than later for the benefit of the nation, la, la, la. And then it comes out that, and I remember this, I remember Lindsey being one of the, impeach Clinton people who said, back in 99, impeachment is not about punishment. Impeachment is about purifying, cleansing the office, I think his words were. It's about cleansing the office and about restoring dignity and respect to the office and honor to the office. You know what I want to know? All of those people who were outraged, just absolutely outraged that Bill Clinton would engage in any activity with an intern. And they were, just morally outraged and screaming and pounding the fist and how dare he. Where are they now? Where are those people now? Where were they in 2016? Where were they in 2015? Where were they when Trump, raised his hand and said, I'm the guy? Where have they been? I guess they're with the Tea Party people, the ones who were against debt and deficits and all of that. I guess they're riding around, chasing the welfare queen who we've never found, or the small family farmer who lost his farm because of the estate tax that we've never found. Maybe they're chasing them. Anyway, Rudy Giuliani chimed in, said there's no allegations of any wrongdoing against the president. None in the government's charges against Mr. Cohen. It is clear that the prosecutors, as the prosecutors noted, Mr. Cohen's actions reflect a pattern of lies and dishonesty over a significant period of time. Kind of like yours, Rudy, and kind of like Donnie's. I mean, you got to give Donnie credit. Good liar. Well, not really a good liar. He's caught all the time, but doesn't ever seem to harm him. And he is very, very consistent. As my grandfather would say, there's somebody who would lie when the truth would be better. John Cornyn, Senate Majority Whip, took a play from Giuliani's Truth is Not Truth playbook and said, I don't think it implicates him at all, President Trump, particularly on the Russian investigation. This doesn't add anything to the allegations of misconduct relative to the Russia investigation. Chris Stewart, the Republican representative from Utah, was on with CNN with Wolf Blitzer. He said that Mr. Manafort, though he was a friend of the president, should be held accountable for his illegal activities. I hope the president doesn't pardon him. The American people want everybody to be treated the same. Wow. A Republican who actually said we should hold someone accountable? He goes on to say, I honestly don't know what to believe at this point. Mr. Cohen has been very inconsistent in his statements. The president hasn't been terribly consistent in some of the things he's said. Kind of where I'm at, and I agree with him. It's a mess. You can't believe either one of them. I guess it's all fake news or just alternative facts, however you want to put that. And this is the problem with having muddy waters like this. Who knows who to believe, if anyone? If you believe anybody. And there's part of me that goes, I believe nobody. Lock them all up. They're all lying, and at some point they're all complicit, and they're all guilty. Sweep the whole lot of them away. Let's start over again. Mitt Romney he chimed in. He said the events of the last 24 hours confirm that conduct by highly placed individuals was both dishonorable and illegal. Also confirmed is my faith in our justice system and my conviction that we are a nation committed to the rule of law. Very statesmanlike. Not a big fan of Mittens, but, chimes in there. Also, Orrin Hatch chimed in. Naturally, it makes you very concerned. But the president shouldn't be held responsible for the actions of the people he trusted. Really now? Especially if you believe what Cohen said, that it was at Trump's direction that he paid the $130,000 off to the porn star and paid off another one. And I go back to the original story, the original lie, the original sin, if you will, which was Michael Cohen, out of the goodness of his heart, because he's such a good friend. And wouldn't we all like to have a friend like Michael Cohen who's going to, without his wife's knowledge, go get a second mortgage on the house to pay off the porn star mistress so that nobody can find out? Did anyone buy that even a little bit? That he's such a good friend that he would put his home in jeopardy, his wife, his marriage in jeopardy? Look, I can tell you right now that if my wife found out that I took out a second mortgage on our house to pay off someone else's debt for some mistress doing who knows what, there would be no happy home. There might be, some things waiting for me on the curb. Who knows? But I don't buy at all any of the nonsense that he's such a good friend. Such a good friend. And I love watching the Republicans do these gymnastics on still trying to be on the Trump train, but still try and save some bit of conscience. Today I got an email from Jim Jordan, the Republican from Ohio, who wanted me to throw them some money. The true majority PAC needs my money because evidently they didn't do anything that they said they were going to do. And if I give them more money, then maybe next time, checks in the mail. And he threw my representative, Scott Perry, in there, who's always been a Trump boy. He doesn't really have a brain of his own, in my view. Just very much, is to the extreme as you can possibly get. And I found it interesting that, they threw a bunch of these names on there, say, hey, give us money. We're 100%. We're doubling down on the Trump train. And I'm going, really? Now you've decided the day after indictments and the day after guilty pleas and the day after guilty verdicts that now is the good time to double down on your belief that Trump is the right guy? Really? And, and I put it out, to my friends and, the people that I know in the neighborhood going, hey, this is who one of your choices are. I would argue a bad choice. I would argue Scott Perry is probably the worst choice. Throw in Mickey Mouse, throw in somebody, anybody, write in Jill Stein for all I care. Not Scott Perry. But I do find it interesting on this moment that they would be doubling down on the Trump train, which begs the question, what do Democrats do now? The elections are steaming closer and closer. Do they take on the mantra of, impeachment? Do they go after Trump? Do they take the moral high ground and say, we're going to be above that? We're going to run on policy and on issues? Or do they go after him? If you look at what was successful in Western Pennsylvania, Connor Lamb, I don't think mentioned Trump's name once. Ran on policy, ran on how you're going to make people's lives better, ran on unions. It's going to be interesting. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about that. What should candidates be doing in this era now that there's all of this explosive stuff? That now we, as Lanny Davis said, the president of the United States is a criminal. Is that what you lead with? You're voting for don't vote for the party of criminals? Or do people already get that? I'll tell you, I think the Republican Party is a bunch of criminals. And we will find out. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend David Yankovich is going to be here to share some of his thoughts on what he thinks candidates should do in this era of wow. Right back. Stick around.
Own 90% of the wealth. Where do you fit in? Take a look at yourself. 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth.
The year was 1945. That was the day 5 women working for United Airlines formed the first union for airline stewardesses. Those women were Ada Brown, Frances Hall, Edith Lauterbach, Sally Tometz, and Sally Watt. They called their new organization the Airline Stewardesses Association. The women elected Ada Brown as their first president. Stewardesses faced many workplace challenges. Ada Brown explained, "We had no rights. Let's put it that way. We were at the mercy of the company. Flight attendants were not permitted to marry. They had to meet strict height, weight, and appearance standards. Many times they had to put up with being referred to as girls while working long hours for low pay. They were expected to retire or take a job on the ground by the age of 32. The 5 women who organized the new union wanted to improve the conditions under which they worked. Within months, they had signed up 75% of their co-workers at United. The stewardesses at United had not received a pay increase for 15 years. The new union won a raise in starting wages from $125 to $155 a month. They also were able to establish a grievance procedure. Yet, it was not until the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964 that the women had the ability to address some of the more sexist workplace requirements. Today, the union goes by the name Association of Flight Attendants. It represents nearly 60,000 workers at 18 airlines. Each year, the AFA gives the Ada Brown Greenfield Lifetime Achievement Award in recognition of women and men who have made a difference for their union. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
There's no one at home, and it was cool, it was just all cool. Now it's over for me, and it's over for you. I believe the world is burning to the ground. Oh well, I guess we're gonna find out. Let's see how far we go. Let's see how far we go.
So on Tuesday, with all of the stuff that went on, all of the indictments of, I forgot to even talk about Duncan, Hunter and his wife and their misappropriation of funds. Obviously the Manafort decision, the Cohen plea. With all of that stuff, I forgot to really talk about Foster Freeze yesterday in the Wyoming primary. Went down in flames. I guess his birth control concept of, just giving the gals an aspirin to put between their knees didn't really go over well with the women folk there in Wyoming. I wonder why. I wonder why it is the curmudgeon billionaire went down in flames. Glad he did. Although, to be honest, I would have liked to have seen him win because it'd have been nice to see another governor's mansion up for a possible flip because, hey, the Democrats need it. So the question is, how should now, after everything that happened yesterday, all of the guilty pleas, the verdicts, all of that stuff, how should Democrats be running from now until Election Day? And here to share some thoughts, our good friend David Yankovich, a digital strategist, former congressional candidate. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, big day yesterday. Lots of stuff. Some things flew under the radar, like my buddy Freeze, but a huge day.
Oh, absolutely monumental for national politics and obviously for Donald Trump and what we're trying to do. In terms of local candidates running for office, I'm not sure it changes that much. I think everybody who's running, should continue running on the issues and talking about how they're going to help families, not focusing too much on what, Donald Trump's doing or what porn stars he paid off or what's going on there.
Yeah, but, the reaction is, they're all crooks. The reaction is the Republican Party is going down in flames. The reaction, viscerally, my thought is, we go after this because this is where they're vulnerable, but you're saying no.
Well, I think that we have to go after it in a certain way, but the candidates running for office right now, they're trying to convince people that they're working on helping their lives be a little bit better. I'm not too sure how focusing on, the corrupt presidency and the GOP and everything is going to do that unless they're coming from a place of corruption.
Yeah, but how about running on the platform? I'm not going to be a crook. I'm not going to steal campaign funds to pay for dental work. I'm not going to steal campaign funds to take my pet rabbit on a trip. How about that? There's a good place just to start on the anti-corruption. I'm going to be above that. We're going to hold politicos accountable. We're going to get to the bottom of all the thievery and the kleptocracy, and we're going to hold people accountable.
I totally agree with that. But if you're running in a district that is, plus 20 Republican PVI, and you're talking about the Trump problems that are happening rather than talking about, people's rising healthcare costs or any of the one of millions of issues that actually are facing people, you're not going to, I don't think, make very much headway unless you're talking about it from a place of corruption. In Alabama, when Senator Jones was running, we stuck to a message, of kitchen table issues all the way through. Just that was the priority. We stayed on message, and we ended up pulling that one out. I just worry that there's going to be the entire Democratic establishment jumping on the story, and they're going to forget to talk to voters about what's actually affecting their lives. And I want to caution them against that, because elections are won because of the issues. What you're going to do for me. It's a very simple process, really. I don't want everybody to get away from that and jump all over this. I mean, of course, this is something that we definitely need to talk about nationally. We need to drive home. We need to make sure that everybody out there knows what's going on. But on the other hand, the candidates themselves running for office, I think that they'd be better served, talking about education and healthcare and, corruption in their states and, and anybody who's obviously attached to them, it's fair game.
Do you think it's possible to flip people on the policy, on the ideas of education and healthcare and all that stuff, as opposed to on Trump? Because look, I think we're at a point right now where everyone's already chosen sides. I don't know that there are many people who haven't jumped on one side or the other. I don't know that there are the convincibles in the middle on the Trump issue. So maybe it's not the greatest campaign issue, but it sure is fun.
Oh, of course, there's a lot of things that are fun that don't get you anywhere. I like drive my car really fast too. It doesn't mean I'm going to, get away with it all the time. The Democrats need to focus on the issues. That's what I want to see. Have message discipline. Whatever's going on outside your bubble, ignore it. Put your head down. You have 75 days from this point right now to the end of the election. Talk about how you're going to help people. Talk about how you're not corrupt. Talk about you. Don't talk about them. Sell yourself. We can't be the party against Donald Trump, because that's not self-sustaining. By 2020, he might not even be the presidential nominee. What we have to do is change this culture of corruption that is the national, Republican Party right now, and show people that we're not going to do that. We're there for them. We're there for their families, and kind of go back to basics. Why are we Democrats? We're Democrats because of healthcare. We're, for innovation and for business and for, bringing up people and unions and all that. We have to go back to the basics. No matter how much corruption and how much trash is coming out of Washington right now with Trump, they need to be in their districts talking to people about how am I going to make your life better? And I'm not going to back off on that. They have to do that. If they don't, it's just going to be, you're going to bring out Republicans in a race. Everybody's going to go their sides, and it's going to be a wash. They're going to see it just as a normal, negative campaign. If we really want to stamp out their enthusiasm from the right, we have to do it with, kitchen table issues, with the things that real people are facing. The second that you bring Donald Trump up and, all that, you're going to kick a beehive, and you're going to have the entire, Republican Party going against you. And if you're running for the Senate in Wyoming, that's a pretty hefty amount of the electoral. In Alabama, was it 200,000+ Republicans stayed home. They stayed home because we didn't give them a reason to show up. They were happy to stay home. That's what I want to see candidates do, and talk about the issues. Stay on message. Don't let this change your strategy.
Yeah, don't fall into the trap of giving them something to come out for. You're absolutely right on this. Let Trump go down on his own. And this was, I think, a lesson that we learned from Hillary's campaign, because the truth of the matter is, and I've said this 1,000 times, the last 2 weeks of the vacation in my TV viewing area, all we saw from her was I'm not him, and how bad he was, and exactly along what you're talking about, not how she was going to make everyday average working people's lives better. So that's, fantastic advice.
I hope so. And I hope that, there's candidates out there that stick to it. It's really hard. When every single, major person is telling you to swing, and, social media is loud and saying, let's call for impeachment right now, and let's go for, everything. As a candidate, it's really hard to stay on that message when everybody's trying to pull you off that message. Every, news interview, everything you do is going to be trying to get you pulled off of that. What do you think about Trump and Russia? They need to pivot back to the issues. They need to talk about what's going on at home. In Michigan, they have a crisis for chemicals in their water, and of course you have Flint and everything else. Florida, you have, Rick Scott running, probably the most corrupt person in the history of this country, except for maybe Donald Trump. Stick to the issues. Don't allow yourself to go negative in that sense, because it's not going to get you anywhere. Stay positive, talk about the issues, and, when we get to the point where we're able to have a majority in the House and the Senate, which I think we have a really good shot at the House, then we have a different conversation. But right now, stick to the issues. Don't allow yourself to be taken off the message.
The last story I saw from the 538 blog, folks, a 75% chance that Democrats will take the House. In fact, they've pointed out, I think it's 9 seats in the Midwest, 9 seats in the South, 9 seats in the Northeast, and 8 seats in the West that they've identified that are vulnerable and could be flipped. I mean, that would be a huge swing.
I mean, it would be absolutely monumental. And it's gotten to the point where the Republicans have all but given up. This isn't a message for Democrats not to show up. You still show up and vote. We vote like we're going to be down 100 points. But the Republicans on their side have given up and are trying to protect the Senate. That's their number 1, 2, and 3 goal. And of course, we're seeing Russia, doing the same things they usually do, but they're focusing on the Senate as well. They're also putting a full-scale digital operation out there for, against, Tammy Baldwin and Heidi Heitkamp and, several other candidates that are running for re-election this year. They want to save the Senate so that the president does not get impeached, and they're basically going all in there. So in effect, I am also going all in there.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, as you pointed out, I think every congressional candidate is going to be asked that impeachment question. How do you deal with that? I mean, from an advice standpoint, how would you as a candidate deal with that question?
I would just say I'm going to defer to Democratic leadership on that. Right now, I'm trying to win an election where I need to help people. There's 10.4 million kids at risk right now of losing health care. There's children locked in cages. The country's on fire. I'm not focused on whether the president's going to get impeached or not. I'm focused on helping my constituents and the 770,000 people in my district who need it.
That's a good answer. Good pivot. And it's actually, reality. I mean, but they're going to keep hammering on that. And at some point, don't Democrats have to come up with an answer? I know Nancy Pelosi has said it's not high on their priority list. And I got to wonder if that's not, that's not something that the base doesn't want to hear. That's something the base doesn't really want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate that because, I mean, I am, part of the resistance and part of that base. I never want to speak for the leader or anything, but I mean, on their side of it, if it comes out that Trump decides he's going to fire Mueller and Rosenstein and do a Saturday Night Massacre like Nixon did, we don't have the votes right now. If we call for impeachment, we force our representatives into impeachment proceedings over this, we will lose. And not only will we lose the impeachment, Donald Trump will remain president, but then he'll be stronger than ever going into 2020. If we do this thing right, who knows what's going to happen, but we have to wait until next year. Like, we have to win first. We have to win the House. We have to win the Senate if we want to have any prayer of impeachment. We don't have the votes. And the Republicans, we've seen for 2 straight years, they don't care. They really don't care at all. But I'll tell you this, they will care once they lose 100 seats in the House. If they lose the Senate, all of a sudden it's going to be a whole different story. You're going to see a lot of people turn on Donald Trump that he thought were his friends when they're not winning anymore and they're losing their jobs. And I've been saying that since the very beginning. It's just right now we don't have the votes to do it. So, I mean, everybody out there yelling about it and everything, I'm with you. I'm pissed off too. I want to see him go down and be impeached and everything else. But, on the other hand, we have a lot of work to do between now and that point where we can actually do something about it. So to everybody out there, I caution you to don't push too hard on this, because if we move too fast, we don't get anywhere. This is all long game. Politics isn't instant gratification. It takes a long time to get anything done.
No.
And if we call for impeachment today, we lose. And Donald Trump will be stronger than he ever was, because he'll be basically bulletproof. There'll be no way that we can do anything to him, because once you do it once, you can't do it again and have any kind of effect. We have to be patient.
I got an email from the desk of Jim Jordan today. That, it basically came out and said, that we ran on repealing Obamacare. We ran on, building the big wall and defunding Planned Parenthood and gutting spending and destroying welfare. And while we haven't been able to do all of that, in fact, we've done just the opposite of all of that, like raising spending beyond imaginable limits and running up massive debts for, big parties and more tax cuts for the billionaires. He writes, it's time to deliver now. That's why I'm supporting a group of rock-solid conservative candidates who have a record of fighting for less government and more freedom. They have shown that they will keep their promises. Republicans passed the president's tax plan. What we need to do now is we need to, where is it? The House Freedom Fund. We need to jump behind the president and stand with the president, basically doubling down on the Trump train the day after guilty pleas and guilty verdicts and all of that stuff. Do you find that is going to help or hurt the Republicans?
Well, long term, it's going to hurt him for sure. But Donald Trump's been preparing his base for this for 2 years. He's been attacking the press, and he's been attacking the Mueller investigation, attacking just about anybody, the intelligence communities. He has sowed the seeds of doubt into his base, so that anytime anything comes up, of course they're going to double down. They see him as he's the JFK for them. I mean, he really is. He's getting them all the things he promised. He said he's going to build a wall, and he's trying to. He said he was going to deport all the illegals, and he's trying to. I mean, he's doing what he promised to his base, and I'm not crediting him, but to them, they see him as a rock star, and they see everybody else who doesn't like him as a bunch of haters. And they have done a really good job with that messaging over the last 2 years. Our job on our side of it is to stick to the issues. We won time and again talking about the issues, and I'm not saying listen, I'm the first one that says when they go low, you go lower. We have to hit just as hard as they do and then hit harder again. But when it comes down to this, we won every single election from Doug Jones to Conor Lamb to all the other ones in between, Virginia, New Jersey, all of them talking about the issues, not against Donald Trump. That doesn't win us elections. One person isn't that powerful. What really is powerful is, are my kids going to be able to eat next week? Do I have to worry about them going to school and having a shooting? These are the issues that families at night, worry about. Am I going to be able to make bills? Can I pay for my electric and my gas this week? That's what we have to talk about. So all the rhetoric from the Republican side on this, it's all a wash. We beat them on the issues every single time, but we also have to be tough and we have to swing back.
Now, I've always been the mindset if they're going to go low, you punch them in the back of the head and ram their face in the dirt. Kind of like we learned in football.
Yep. I remember when I was a kid, I used to play Pee Wee football, and this kid kept coming at me with his helmet. My coach told me, when he comes at me with his helmet next time, you push your hand in the back of his head and you push him straight down and you go for the quarterback. That's what we need to do. Just ignore them, let them go low, push them into the ground, and move forward and talk about the issues. Roy Moore was doing it down in Alabama, we swung back, we were tough. I mean, you have to be. But on the other hand, I don't want to get bogged down into the arguments that they want. And they want they want anything to do to divide anybody, anything they can do to separate votes and do that, and especially the Democratic Party between, the Bernie and the Hillary faction. Yep. They want to separate as much as they possibly can. Our job is to ignore their tactics, come together, talk about the issues, and punch them in the back of the head.
Yeah. Now, what I've seen from the Republicans so far, and from Trump, that the immigration issue is probably all they've got. That's the only thing that they can really run on, and fearing and smearing and all of this stuff. And this poor girl who was murdered recently, and they've created this narrative that the guy who killed her was an undocumented or an illegal immigrant. And there are reports that maybe not, but facts aren't going to matter here.
Oh, that's what they do, and to them, they're probably seeing that as a godsend that story happened. And I mean, I'm so sorry for the family of the victim. But on the Republican side, I mean, every single other news organization is talking about Trump and Russia and what's going on with Cohen and Manafort. And then Fox News has, that story leading. And then way, way down the page, it's, Trump's legal problem. That's how they have won elections in the past. That's how they think they're going to keep the Senate. That's how they think they're going to retain the House and the governorships, is dividing people, getting people mad, and getting them out to vote with anger. They are really good at stoking the anger embers of their base. And, we're better at talking about the issues. So let's play to our strength. We'll beat them every time.
Any predictions for November, or are you staying out of it?
Well, predictions for the House and the Senate, governorships, which predictions?
All of the above. Give me some predictions.
Yeah. So I think definitely I feel good about the House. The Senate right now, I'm going to say 50-50. And I think we're going to pick up some governorships. I think right now they're 3 away from a constitutional convention. I think we're going to probably put them 8 or 9 away. So I'm feeling pretty good. I want to see some of our Senate candidates get into the fight a little bit more and get a little bit more attention. So if you're out there and you're listening and you have a senator running for re-election or anything in your state, or someone who's up for election, definitely get involved there, because that's where we're putting all of our power and money into for 2018, in the sense that the Republicans have basically given up on the House. We still have work to do there too, but get involved, help your senators.
last question I've got for you. You're talking about the Senate. Obviously, on the day after Labor Day, the Kavanaugh confirmation is going to begin. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, the thing is this is corruption. Any candidates that are out there that are being asked about that, I mean, obviously this is the year of the women, and every single election, 20% more women are showing up every single time. But this issue here is also, I mean, women's right to choose is up at stake, so it's probably the most important thing. But if you're running, talk about corruption. It's a corrupt process. Corporations basically gave their names of the people that they wanted to be on the short list. It's corrupt. The process, top to bottom, is completely corrupt. Running on that issue is going to help you a lot more than running on, women's right to choose or anything like that, because again, you kick the hornet's nest of all the right to lifers out there and you get them out to vote. Let's totally destroy their excitement and, really go to the issues. Why is this bad for your district? And it can't just be the one issue, even though it's the most important to just about all of us. Talk about corruption. Talk about why you can't vote for it. Or if you can vote for it, you better have a good reason, because your base is going to destroy you if you vote against it.
Good advice, as always. David, I appreciate the time, the thoughts. I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much, Rick. You have a good one.
You as well. As always, our good friend David Yankovich. Look, level-headed advice, sound advice. If you're a candidate, I might take it. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1980. That was the day that Joyce Miller became the first woman ever elected to the executive board of the AFL-CIO. In her 2012 obituary, the New York Times described Joyce's commitment to women's rights in the labor movement, writing, "Miss Miller saw union membership, collective bargaining, and labor contracts as the road to equality for working women, and she believed that women should be a part of union management to make sure that attention was paid to issues like equal opportunity, equal pay, parental leave, child care, health insurance, and discrimination in the workplace." Joyce grew up in Chicago, where she earned her master's degree in education from the University of Chicago. She first entered the labor movement as a worker at a gumball factory while attending college. After graduation, she became the education director for the Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union in Pittsburgh. She remained dedicated to union education for rank and file members. Joyce was a founding member of the Coalition of Labor Union Women, or CLU. She served as CLU's East Coast vice president, eventually being elected CLU's president in 1977, a position she would hold for 15 years. Under her leadership, CLU worked as a powerful voice for women's reproductive rights, improving child care, and increasing the number of women in union leadership positions. In 1993, President Bill Clinton named Joyce Miller the executive director of the Glass Ceiling Commission. The purpose of the commission was to gather testimony about women's experience in the workplace and to draft a report of their findings. Of her career, Joyce said, "I came to the labor movement with stars in my eyes. I saw it as a vehicle for social change, and I never changed my mind." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So Duncan Hunter and the wife, eager to get to trial. Can't wait. Excited about going to trial over the charges that they blew a boatload of money from the campaign to, take that Italian trip, to bring the bunny along to, that wonderful, surf excursion. Oh, and let's not forget the dental work. mind blowing. You would think, as a member of Congress, you go, you know what? I have to steal money for dental work. Maybe we should push a policy that makes sure that everyone gets some kind of dental work. That's the one that got me. I get stealing money for, getting drunk and, eating at fancy restaurants and going on fancy trips. But for something like dental work, to steal campaign money, I don't know. I'm just not getting it. Anyway, here to find out what's going on around the world in Washington, D.C., I've got Justin Duckham, Talk Media News. Justin, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, great to be here.
So dental work, evidently misappropriated was the word that I read in the article. I like to use the proper term of stole or robbed or theft or, something along those lines. Misappropriated sounds almost accidental.
No, just some of the stuff in here is just so mind-bogglingly corrupt that it just seems like self-parody. Every now and then there are people who float around just kind of fake transcripts online that are sort of mocking the bizarreness of the Trump age. And when I first read some of these, I thought that this was surely some internet, hoax or something like that. When you talk about just the sheer depths of just, God, I guess just shamelessness that, Duncan Hunter went through. But lo and behold, this report is more bizarre than fiction, and really highlights that there is a deep problem within the Republican Party in the lead up to the midterm. Not just with Duncan Hunter, but we have Chris Collins as well, who, has been targeted for insider trading. Both of these individuals have lost their committee assignments for the time being, and considering how long these investigations are going to go, probably for quite a bit longer than they would hope for. But this is just the fact that this went under the radar after everything that we've seen gone on with Trump, just really highlights how strange of a time things are right now.
Yeah, and the fact that, the two of them were eventually outed shows just how bad it probably was, that even the Republicans are going, well, we can't, we got to do something. Something's got to happen. We can't, if this gets found out, we could all be taken down. But wait a second. No, never mind. Never mind that. Sorry. That was just, I don't know. That was me thinking that the Republicans cared about their party.
I mean, interestingly enough, this is coinciding with a anti-corruption proposal that Elizabeth Warren put forward yesterday during an appearance at the National Press Club, sort of, I guess, warming this up as a potential campaign item come the 2018 midterms when that gets a little bit closer. And given everything that we've seen, it may make sense for the Democrats to try to turn the tables. The Republicans have cried corruption for years. They made 2016 a campaign against a, corrupt establishment. But now at this point, when you have this kind of evidence, it's something that's just kind of inescapable, especially considering when you look at the polling for it, it's not like corruption is something that's necessarily, going under the radar or being thrown off by the wayside. This is something that people do care about, and something that could be a pretty effective message if somebody who's an effective political communicator figures out how to fine-tune it.
No, I mean, you go back to the Nixon quote, you got to know if your president's a crook. You got to know if your government's crooked. And I look at these people who, they're supposed to be the good government's people. They're supposed to be the good God-fearing Christian folk. That the 10 rules they want plastered all over the place that they never seem to follow, which is just weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's just bizarre that this was able to go by for so long. And again, it's just staggering that this isn't the top story of the day, nor is it the most dangerous one for the Republican Party at large. It's one of those things that any other day would have brought the news cycle to a halt. Any other administration would have been a much bigger deal, but lo and behold, it's just something that we've all kind of glazed over. Yeah,
next. I mean, it's next. And speaking of next, evidently the White House is sticking to their story that, I guess, the Sergeant Schultz defense. I know nothing. I see nothing. I do nothing.
Yeah, okay, so we had the first White House briefing in the wake of yesterday's news today, and we got just a very bizarrely stilted line from White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, basically saying that the president did nothing wrong, that there was no evidence of collusion, and that there were no charges brought against him. This was something that she repeated about 7 times from the podium, even when questions came up that were much more basic and much more to the point than just broader ones over whether or not the president committed a crime. Just basic questions over whether or not the president lied when he told reporters that he was unaware of the payments that Michael Cohen delivered to Stormy Daniels, and now, as we know from Cohen's guilty plea, quite likely to at least one other woman. And just hiding behind this basic line that was something that's put forward, I guess, by the outside legal counsel when they said yesterday during their statement, or in their statement rather, that the president is pretty much free from any wrongdoing and was not implicated by Cohen's guilty plea. It just shows a staggering level of shamelessness, in the sense that they are willing to dodge these very realistic questions, and instead of fulfilling the duty as a taxpayer-funded spokesman for the administration, instead putting it off to Rudy Giuliani and Jay Sekulow, the outside attorneys who have shown that they are less than honest brokers at this point.
Yeah, they're a clown show. I mean, they're entertaining, and I don't know why any news network would even put them on, knowing that every word out of their mouth is going to be contradicted, a couple of days from now, or in the next sentence, for that matter.
Or as Chuck Todd put it, instantly becoming bad memes when Giuliani came forward and said that truth was not truth, and something that was repeated almost, today, at least in spirit, from the president, who basically declared that crime is not a crime.
Yeah, it's very funny, and the thing that's getting me is as I'm reading some of the stories about Cohen and his lawyer, who I think had this week the line of the week, which is the president of the United States is a criminal. That will go down in history. He's also saying that, look, Michael, he's done the flip, and he's singing like a bird, which, hello, he's going to have to save his behind.
Exactly. Yeah, we have until December for Michael Cohen to be sentenced. That's when that's expected to take place. And there is a lot that can happen between now and then. And Lanny Davis has made a number of appearances in which he has taken the notion of a pardon from Trump off the table and said very clearly, with an audience of one, to the Mueller team, or to Mueller rather, that Cohen has information and is willing to share it, quite likely in a bid to get a reduced sentence, since he is facing upwards of about 65 years based on what he pleaded guilty to yesterday. Not really giving much details over what exactly Cohen could be putting forward, but hinting very strongly that it could be of interest to the broader investigation into potential collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. And this shouldn't really come as a surprise, considering that we saw a lot of items floated in the news beforehand that sort of pointed in this direction of Cohen, I guess, trying to warm himself up as a cooperative witness. This included the tape of the conversation between him and Trump, as well as the report that Cohen, I guess, is basically saying behind the scenes that he has evidence that Trump knew in advance of the of the meeting in Trump Tower with the Russian attorney that was billed pretty much clearly from the organizers for it as an opportunity to get dirt on the Clinton campaign from the Russian government. So we have a long rollout to see what exactly he's going to be putting forward, what exactly we're going to be seeing in terms of sentencing. But right now, it is not good for the president, and is basically the nightmare scenario, since we know now that the president was or has been more worried about Michael Cohen than the Mueller investigation as a whole, and it looks like it could be for good reason.
No, I mean, look, if he's your fixer, if he's your guy, if he was the guy who would bury the bodies when you were done with them, he knows where everything is. And I got to assume, based on, what was probably taken from his office, from his home and his hotel room, Mueller's got all that stuff too. And the only good I think Cohen would be was to be able to draw the lines and make getting the information faster. Because I think it's probably all right there documented.
No, exactly. I mean, there's not really much wiggle room in terms of how the administration can portray themselves in this. There's already been a lot of contradictions. The president has said that he did not know about the payments at the time, despite the fact that there is audio recordings that strongly suggest that he did know at the time. arguing that this was not a campaign violation because he didn't use campaign funds and
Right.
instead just used his own personal funds. That's something that actually is worse than using campaign funds. If this had been done above the board using, campaign money, this wouldn't have become an illegal contribution, perhaps excessive, but certainly not the illegal corporate one that we saw. So just a team that can't shoot straight during a time of immense peril for the presidency.
Yeah, does anybody buy this? Because I've asked a bunch of people who are Trump supporters. I've asked them, do you buy the official line, which is Cohen is such a good friend that he's going to take out a second loan on his home without his wife knowing to pay off his friend's porn star mistress? Do you really buy that? Without his knowledge, without him being involved, without him negotiating, without him giving the okay, because maybe he's all right with having the porn star mistress running around saying, "Hey, yeah, I did this." Did anybody buy that? And I'll tell you, I've met a couple of people who actually bought that line because, well, why would Trump lie? Well, why would any guy lie about cheating on his wife?
Well, even the White House, when they were confronted with questions about this, are less than willing, especially these days, to give a flat-out denial or to explicitly echo what the president has said. Basically just referring to the president's previous statements, not really giving this the robust White House defense you would usually see with serious questions that, surround extramarital affairs and payoffs and whatnot. And basically, I guess, letting the president sort of twist in the wind over these allegations, not really rushing to his aid, which is pretty shocking on the face of it.
Now, what's interesting to me is, I read the story, I think it was over at Politico, where they were saying that the aides are trying to keep him occupied and they don't want him watching TV to where he's going to get all worked up and all in a frenzy. The busier they can keep him with busy work, like going to rallies and playing with toys and, whatever it is they do to keep him occupied. Keep him away from Fox News, keep him away from Twitter, because he's literally losing his mind.
I mean, it almost seemed like it was working this morning. I woke up and was pretty shocked not to have a couple of notifications on my phone from the president that usually kind of greets me in the morning. It's like a sad reverse Christmas. And it wasn't until, I guess, the 9 o'clock hour or maybe a little bit later where we first saw the president weighing in, starting off with a kind of funny tongue-in-cheek quip about how you shouldn't go to Michael Cohen for legal services before descending into just maddening statements about how campaign finance violations aren't actually crimes and, simultaneously trying to take a swipe at Obama for a 2013 FEC fine that team had to pay. So, yeah, just if there is an effort to try to muzzle the president, it does not seem to be effective, not that it really has in the past, and nor should we really expect it to be. But, I guess for a brief period of time this morning, it looked like it would be.
Yeah,
but,
like you, it was 6 o'clock. I'm looking at my phone going, well, where is it? Come on. I'm waiting. And then I thought, well, maybe an extra bowl of ice cream for breakfast.
Yeah, and also, the rally last night, which, would have been the prime scenario for the president to really unload on this, just didn't really mention it during that, speech before West Virginia, which is, his hardcore extreme base.
Yep.
And, no fireworks on that front there.
They did chant "lock her up," though.
Oh, they most certainly did. They did drain that swamp and lock her up, both of which are, pretty questionable considering what we've seen so far.
Especially
I don't think
what happened yesterday. I mean, kind of draining the swamp. I mean, there goes Manafort, there goes Cohen. Let's hope for a bunch more. I'm looking for the perp walk parade. In fact, as I've said, I'd be willing to use tax dollars to pay for it. But here, the other question in this is, now that we have potentially an unindicted co-conspirator sitting in the Oval Office, the idea that he's going to choose a Supreme Court justice or has chosen one who is sympathetic to not holding the president accountable seems to me to be kind of, stacking the deck and maybe something we shouldn't as a country allow to go forward, considering, I think the legitimacy of this White House is being called into question. Just kind of a thought.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that has been reinvigorating a lot of progressive advocacy groups who have been trying to push the confirmation hearing but beyond the midterm elections or urged the president to choose somebody else, since it's just kind of staggering that he's going for somebody who has Brett Kavanaugh's view of the breadth of executive power during this period of time. This is something that's been latched on by Democratic lawmakers as well, including Chuck Schumer. But it doesn't look like this is going to be slowing it down. There were a number of Republicans on the Hill who were asked about this. They sort of shied away from that question. And despite the fact that, we are very much in a constitutional crisis in terms of a lifetime appointment put forward by somebody who, is facing these allegations, it's pretty much being viewed as business as usual or just another political stunt, even though this is something that presents some very serious issues, not just for, scoring political points, but for how exactly, Kavanaugh's going to be conducting himself down the road.
Yeah, and I saw yesterday you had Susan Collins, who evidently, claims she sat down with Kavanaugh and said, he believes in decided law, and he believes Roe is a decided piece of decided law, and, doing the John Roberts thing. And I'm going, how naive can you be?
Yeah, I mean, we have to keep in mind the fact that this was a nominee who was selected with joint efforts of, the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, who made a list for Trump. And you kind of have to assume that they made that list for a reason. It probably wasn't just to, give a couple of safe choices. It was probably because they were expecting certain judicial outcomes by putting their guy on the court.
Yeah, let the fun continue, though. Yesterday was an entertaining day. I'm looking forward to the next shoe to fall off the centipede. I know Ronald Reagan has got to be happy, knowing that there will be more people indicted and convicted in this administration than there were his. Off the hook, there he goes. But let the fun continue. Justin, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick. Have a good one.
As always, our good friend Justin Duckham, Talk Media News. Quick break.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
Hello, I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFGE Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. A union over 1.4 million strong and growing, AFGE is gaining improvements in the workplace all across America. And right here in the Commonwealth, more than 95,000 AFGE members make Pennsylvania happen. Highways, libraries, hospitals, parks, offices, prisons, classrooms, museums, courtrooms. You'll find AFGE members at work in all these places and many more.
I make Pennsylvania happen every day.
I make Pennsylvania happen every day.
Today's AFGE members take on public service jobs as diverse as they are, not for the recognition, but for a better Pennsylvania. For more information, please visit our website at AFGE13.org. Labor is changing, so is your labor union. We are AFGE.
We make Pennsylvania happen!
If you inject a stream of raw ignorance into a vat of gaseous arrogance, then jolt the mixture with 1,000 megawatts of malevolence, what does it produce? Answer: Donald Trump's executive order of April 12th. King Donald I has been in a deep pout over negative articles about him in the Washington Post newspaper, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, king of the Amazon.com empire. King Trump fired off several rounds of angry tweets assailing King Bezos, including a potshot claiming that Amazon is, quote, ripping off the post office by underpaying for the millions of its packages the Postal Service ships. Tweets aside, Trump has the firepower of the federal government at his fingertips, so he's now arrogantly using the government to escalate his personal spat with Bezos. By executive order, he set up a federal task force to conduct a pernicious political inquisition into, quote, our money-losing post office, particularly looking at the, quote, pricing of the package delivery market. This reflects Trump's vast ignorance. Far from being a money loser, The U.S. Postal Service has actually been earning about $1 billion a year in profit. His false claim of unsustainable postal losses stems from a 2006 political ploy by right-wingers who want to destroy the public service. They passed a law dictating that USPS pre-fund retiree health benefits 75 years into the future, covering benefit costs for workers who haven't even been born, much less hired and retired. This adds a totally hokey expense of up to $5 billion a year to the USPS corporate ledger, creating the fake loss Trump is now so bombastically citing as the rationale for his destructive inquisition. This is Jim Hightower saying, sometimes public policy inadvertently turns bad, but when it's based on ignorance and arrogance, policy inevitably goes bad.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
There is no other agency like the EPA. It should really be renamed the Job-Killing Organization of America.
Because, brothers, it's a fact. If we take and don't put back, they'll have to pay for all we did. So let's leave some blue up above us. Let's leave some green on the ground. It's only as to follow. Let's save some for tomorrow. We can pass it on down.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. You know, leaving something for the future. Wow, what a concept that would be. Mark your calendars. Tuesday, August 28th, from noon to 1 p.m. in Logan Square by the Fountain in Philadelphia. Free ice cream. And who could be against free ice cream? Who could possibly be against the idea of free ice cream, as a number of environmental groups and AFGE Local 3631 host the Beat the Heat rally to highlight the need to do something, anything, about climate change. And while ice cream may help battle the heat today, down the road, well, that could be a completely and totally different story, which is why I've asked Gary Morton to come talk with us. Gary's the president of AFGE Local 3631. Gary, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having me back on. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
I appreciate you coming. Free ice cream, huh?
Yeah, hey, it's a shame you got to do what you have to do to call attention. So it's nice to have free ice cream. We're going to beat the heat, but the main thing is to call attention to climate change and get the people activated, because democracy is not dead. We have to use it now.
Yeah, so maybe if you sent a couple of scoops to Trump, maybe that'd get his attention.
I hope so. Who doesn't like ice cream? But that story might speak for itself. First, I want to say thank you again for having me on the show. I want to give a shout out to the main sponsors of this event. They are Penn Environment, the Clean Air Council, and Penn Future. They were kind enough to give me an opportunity to say a few words and ask the union to come out, and we were more than happy to support anything that would provide, a clean environment for our years to come, for our future.
Right, because we're really under attack right now. I mean, and you as the union representative for a lot of EPA workers, I mean, you've got to be hearing stories that are coming from inside the EPA that would just make our toes curl.
Oh, yes. People are terrified. They're concerned that they will not be able to do what is necessary to protect the environment. And what I'm talking about is the tools that are necessary, the mission of the agency. We as federal employees that I represent, which I am one of, but I'm here in my capacity as the president of AFGE Local 631, we're very dedicated, and we want to serve the public and complete the mission of the agency, which is to provide protect human health and the environment. And with all the congressional issues, the lack of funding, possible reorganizations, we just don't know if we're going to have the proper funding that will allow us to keep the air and water clean for the American citizens.
Well, I mean, the goal is really, to gut all of the regulatory agencies and really, take every cop off the beat, because there's this belief, Gary, and I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, that business will police itself. They'll do the right thing in their best interest because they don't want to get sued by us.
Oh, of course. That's why they have a cadre of lawyers, and we live in a capitalistic society that, and especially under this administration, where big business will be given a license to pollute. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is the, Clean Power Plan. Just recently we had a court ruling stating that the agency has delayed for a period of time in installing these Obama-era regulations that cut down emissions.
Right, because, hey, look, Trump ran on the idea that we're going to make coal great again. We're going to burn the dirty stuff. We're going to pollute the air, and any of that other, that solar, wind, any of that hippie liberal stuff, not so much of.
I don't understand why people don't understand that the EPA enforces life-saving regulations, not job-killing regulations. And when you have an administration that wants to lower the standards of emissions, and with coal and glass, and with the pollution from cars, and to pollute the waters through lowering the standards of a violation and repealing the programs and acts set by Congress that have helped keep our waters clean since the 60s, 70s, 70s when the EPA was created.
No, you're right. I mean, when I look at this, everything that this administration has done thus far is moving us backward. I mean, when they undid the CAFE standards, which I thought was a step in the right direction to make cars more fuel efficient, using less gas, encouraging electric hybrid vehicles, all of these things that get us off the dirty fossil fuels, seems to me to be a step in the right direction and to move us towards complete energy independence without having to deal with OPEC or Iran or any of these nations that we have turmoil with. It just seems to be a smart thing to do, yet, this administration, the complete opposite.
Yes, I agree. And one thing I've stated in the past is that you cannot do environmental protection for profit. And that's what the administration's trying to do. For example, the Wheeler and William replacement proposal, the Clean Power Plan, it just doesn't result in the same reduction of emissions that the Clean Power Plan does. Right. And with the biggest source of emissions being the power plants, the coal and the gas burning and car emissions, they systematically try to gut the regulations that have been in place since the 70s. And the term cooperative federalism, giving it to the states so the states can decide their own levels of enforcement and their own levels of regulation. It didn't work in the past. That's why the EPA was formed under President Nixon back in, I believe, 1971 or 70 to combat this type of economic decision-making that was resulting in the terrible environment we had there.
Right, because what I think we've learned, and we've learned on a number of issues, is that when you pit states against one another, it's a race to the bottom. I mean, it's who's willing. I mean, you look at the right to work issue, and I love bringing this up because one of the sales points that states make is, hey, we can steal jobs from other areas because our wages are lower and our health care coverage rates are lower and our pension rates are lower. And, hey, we've got lower standards for everything else. So it just seems that, on every front, when you have this kind of a scenario where we're pitting states against one another, working people lose.
Yes, because what we will have is a special interest society where everyone is looking out for themselves.
I look out for myself every day, Gary, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
But I do care if my kids breathe clean air, and I don't want them to have the asthma like I did in the 70s, and I don't want them to not be able to swim in Lake Erie because everything's dead. I want to think about others too, but I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking about myself.
No, there's nothing wrong with thinking about yourself. However, in order for yourself to survive, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying plural, in order for the United States to survive, we have to sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice might be done on the economic scale, where maybe they can get a little less profit, but our children's children, our grandchildren's children, they can have a future. Our soldiers who are going over to fight for our freedom, to make sure that we can eat ice cream on next Tuesday in a free environment, they deserve for us to stand up for them so that when they come home and their children's children, their grandchildren's children can have a clean environment the way I'm living now. So as a human being, it's only fair that I care about the next one because someone cared about me so I could be right here today.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, when you're talking about the capitalists at the top, the moneyed interests, the idea of less profit now so that your grandkids can breathe clean air. Screw the grandkids. I need money now.
Well, I want to tell them that in addition to that money they need now, their grandchildren will have to breathe the same air. And if they want to live in a bubble or create an environment where only the elitists can have the clean air, the people aren't going to stand for it. Democracy isn't dead. We as a people, and this is what this rally is, to call attention so we can call our congressmen and tell them to do the job that we elected them for, to protect our rights and to exercise our thoughts to make sure this administration doesn't continue with the policy, stripping away not only the EPA and what we do, but all the federal servants who serve and protect the United States citizens.
So is that the pitch you're going to be making next Tuesday? Handing out the ice cream, engaging in conversation. What are you hoping people walk away with? Will we be handing out phones saying, "Hey, make a call now"? What are we expecting?
Well, one of the things I'm going to hand out is the Save the U.S. EPA card. It's the website. It's SaveTheUSEPA.org. And Facebook, it's Facebook.com, Save the EPA. On Twitter, it's Twitter.com, Save the US EPA. That's a website, and we hope to educate people and make them use their rights before they lose them. Because with this administration, they distract you, and before you know it, for example, we'll use the tax cut. Yeah, they'll put $40 in some people's paycheck, maybe $100 in other people's paycheck. Down the line, they're going to take it back. So you're happy with, let's say, $40 to $100, but they're getting thousands to millions, to hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars of tax cut. So the people need to wake up and exercise their rights before they lose them. And it's a matter of life and breath, not to be corny, but we see in China. I don't want to walk around with a mask. We have people in America with the allergies and things of that nature. So if we go back,
Gary, I suffered through it as a kid. You don't have to sell me. I remember watching the news at night, finding out what the pollution index was going to be the next day, and how bad the smog was, and the acid rain, and all of that. I don't want to go back. Don't want my kids, my grandkids, don't want anybody's kids to suffer like I did.
Right. That's why we're going to call attention and tell the people, call your congressman, do everything, become educated on climate change. And that's where, although AFGE 3631 is happy, we are excited when the call came from Penn Environment, Clean Air Council, Penn Future, and other environmental groups who are leading the charge, because we're only the public servants who enforce the laws and regulations set before us by Congress. So these environmental groups are on the forefront holding our lawmakers holding the courts to the fire, because everyone needs clean air, clean water. It helps with our food supply. I don't know anyone. It's like sight. Until I had glasses, I did not understand how much you read.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer. And I hope people will visit the website, savetheUSEPA.org. We'll get links out so everyone can take a look at that. And remember, next Tuesday, the free ice cream there in Logan Square there in Philadelphia between noon and 1. And even if you don't get the ice cream, maybe consider talking about saving the environment and the planet and our future and humanity and all of that stuff. Last thing I've got for you, Gary, you guys did a fantastic job at the end of July promoting the Red for Feds campaign.
Thank you.
I thought it was a good campaign, but kind of got a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
There you were on the Philadelphia News Channel wearing a Cincinnati Reds jersey. What's with that?
I went Reds for Fed. Don't worry. You can add to a list of loved ones, my wife, my friend who worked for the news. I just went overboard with the Reds. So I am a Phillies fan, and I apologize. I'm grinning from ear to ear. I went overboard with the red, but no more. If I get out there again, I have the Phillies fever.
There you go. Good stuff. Gary, I appreciate the time. Good talking with you.
Thank you. God bless you. And anytime, sir, I'll be more than happy to speak with you.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. Gary Morton, president of AFGE Local 3631 there in Philadelphia. They represent the EPA workers. I think, on the website, savetheUSEPA.org. Quick break, right back. Stick around to listen to The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day 5 women working for United Airlines formed the first union for airline stewardesses. Those women were Ada Brown, Frances Hall, Edith Lauterbach, Sally Tometz, and Sally Watt. They called their new organization the Airline Stewardesses Association. The women elected Ada Brown as their first president. Stewardesses faced many workplace challenges. Ada Brown explained, "We had no rights. Let's put it that way. We were at the mercy of the company. Flight attendants were not permitted to marry. They had to meet strict height, weight, and appearance standards. Many times they had to put up with being referred to as girls while working long hours for low pay. They were expected to retire or take a job on the ground by the age of 32. The 5 women who organized the new union wanted to improve the conditions under which they worked. Within months, they had signed up 75% of their co-workers at United. The stewardesses at United had not received a pay increase for 15 years. The new union won a raise in starting wages from $125 to $155 a month. They also were able to establish a grievance procedure. Yet, it was not until the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964 that the women had the ability to address some of the more sexist workplace requirements. Today, the union goes by the name Association of Flight Attendants. It represents nearly 60,000 workers at 18 airlines. Each year, the AFA gives the Ada Brown Greenfield Lifetime Achievement Award in recognition of women and men who have made a difference for their union. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. I hope people will show up and pay attention, to this climate issue, and the pollution and all this. 'Cause, I remember, it's been a while, but I remember as a kid just suffering just horribly. In fact, there was a point I think I was like 12 years old. I had passed out on one of my on my paper route on one of my customers' porches, completely passed out because I was completely full of mucus and phlegm and all from my allergies and the asthma that I had, and couldn't breathe. Ended up spending like 2 weeks in the hospital, and which is why to this day I still despise needles, because back then what they did to find out if you were getting enough oxygen is they would take blood from the artery and they'd jab this needle in the middle of your arm, and it was horrible, just horrible. And I wish that on nobody. I wish that on no one. And which is why I think, we need to be doing more to make sure that we don't end up back in those days. Just sad stuff. You want to talk about something? I'm not going to say it's sad. I'm going to say it should be criminal. I don't know if you saw this story out in California. Evidently, Santa Clara County, their fire department had a unlimited data service account with Verizon for their cell phones. Because you want unlimited data. They throw it out there for everyone, and I don't think most people realize that at a certain point they throttle you back to virtually nothing. I remember the one unlimited plan I had, it throttled you back after 5 gigs a month, which was kind of a waste. And I understand this plan was 25 gigs a month, where they would throttle you back. And if if you've seen it, once it starts throttling back, you might as well just give it up because you're not getting anywhere with it. Turns out Verizon had throttled back the Santa Clara County Fire Department's plan, their phone, during this latest fire, this massive, the biggest fire in the history of civilization, basically, they throttled back their phones, virtually making them worthless. And the county of Santa Clara is saying, hey, look, this has everything to do with net neutrality. This has everything to do with the Trump administration allowing these companies to throttle people back. And they're actually throwing their name into this lawsuit. And, because as they point out, in repealing the net neutrality rules, the Trump administration failed to consider public safety threats as required by law, according to this person from Santa Clara County. For this reason alone, this guy says, the repeal of net neutrality was illegal and it must be overturned. And look, I was against ending net neutrality from the beginning. But this is another one of these moments where you go, maybe this isn't something that should be in the hands of a for-profit corporation. Maybe this is something that we, the people, should be doing for ourselves. This is a utility, and it should be heavily regulated. So get this. Evidently, in the middle of this big fire, you've got the county calling and saying, hey, lift the throttling. We need to use this. Evidently, Verizon told the fire department that it should upgrade its $37.99 plan to one that costs $99.99. And I guess the first 20 gigs would be free, and then $8 a gig after that they would have to pay for, so that you wouldn't get throttled. Because understand, like I said, when you have the unlimited, they can throttle you whenever you reach a certain arbitrary number. And whether you get there or not, who knows? And what they say is, they throttle based on the time of day and the amount of traffic and the amount of congestion and all of this stuff. So if you're way up there, they're going to throttle you back during peak times, so that everyone else, to try and be fair, so that everyone else can do their thing. The problem, according to Santa Clara County Fire Department, is that they were throttled back the entire time. That at no point during this phase did it lighten up. And you go, this is one of those things, again, sorry to say, somebody should be going to jail. And it kind of reminded me of Enron. As I was reading through this story, I'm going, What is it about California, one, that this kind of stuff is allowed to go on and the scamming and stuff goes on? And two, it got me thinking about, do you remember the Enron? How they were causing rolling blackouts by doing all kinds of shenanigans, shutting off power stations and doing all kinds of stuff to create a crisis? Remember that? This is kind of what I got from this. And look, there should be a congressional investigation. There should be, because this cost people their homes. This could have cost people their lives. And you've got, Verizon doing the, oh, gee, we're sorry, we didn't mean it. Oh, it was I love the excuse. I love the excuse. It was a customer service failure. That's all it was. It was a customer service failure. You didn't ask for a supervisor. I mean, it really, I mean, every one of us should be completely and totally outraged. And if you remember, and I go back to when the Trump administration and Agent Pie and all of them, rammed this through like thieves in the night and create a scenario where, hey, preferred content and you're not preferred, sorry, I'll pay more and you can get something. We were talking about this when they were doing it, that a scenario like this would come up and all we kept hearing, no, that couldn't happen. Well, here you go. Now, the hope is the Santa Clara County and the Santa Clara County Central Fire Protection District are among 24 local and state government agencies that are suing the FCC as we speak to overturn net neutrality and outlaw throttling and blocking. And it's about damn time. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
I got no time for living, yes, I'm working all the time. It seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me the working man.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
No single regulation threatens our miners, energy workers, and companies more than this crushing attack on American industry.
Trump's move to replace Obama's clean power plan will increase global warming and air pollution. Australia's conservative government abandons its emissions targets. Plus, the Interior Department cancels plan to sell off land stripped from national monument. For now.
All of those stories and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
This July we just had was the hottest month ever in California's history. Applause?
Trump fans, this is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and now Donald Trump wants to make it hotter still, apparently.
Yes, apparently he does. The Trump administration is proposing to significantly weaken U.S. climate policy. 2 years ago, President Barack Obama announced his landmark Clean Power Plan, the first ever carbon emission standards for the nation's power plants to reduce the U.S. contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions that cause dangerous global warming.
We're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. And that's why I committed the United States to leading the world on this challenge, because I believe there is such a thing as being too late.
Now, the Trump administration is formally proposing its own replacement for the Clean Power Plan.
Of course they are. Obama came up with the last one. We got to get rid of that. Everyone knows it.
Critics say it will significantly weaken efforts to reduce U.S. carbon emissions. According to the New York Times, the Trump proposal will allow states to set their own emission standards or even opt out of setting any standards altogether. The Washington Post calculates Trump's proposed replacement would release 12 times more carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere than Obama's plan would have over the same time period. Trump's EPA intends to argue that Obama's EPA exceeded its federal authority in proposing the Clean Power Plan emission standards, and Trump will focus on saving the utility industry $400 million in compliance costs every year and have only negligible benefits to the climate. But Obama's plan was crucial to meeting U.S. climate commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions under the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement.
Which, of course, we're no longer in, so why do we have to meet those commitments?
Actually, we're still in the Paris Climate Agreement, and we won't be formally out of it until 2020.
Oh, well, details.
Trump's proposed policy would also allow old coal plants to continue spewing deadly pollutant toxins like sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, and mercury into the air without having to upgrade their pollution controls.
And there's the heart of the matter. Help out those coal people, and Donald Trump doesn't care how many people it kills or how much of the planet it suffocates.
Obama's Clean Power Plan would have been the pollution equivalent of taking 75 million cars off the road, while Trump's plan, at best, would be like taking just 5 million cars off the road. Energy analysts say it's unlikely the Trump administration's efforts to bail out the coal industry will stop its long-term decline in U.S. electricity markets because that is caused by cheaper natural gas and renewables, not regulation. For example, a new report from the Appalachian Regional Commission on Monday found no significant increase in coal jobs in the state of Kentucky under Trump's policies.
You mean after all that Trump has done for coal miners, it's not increasing the jobs?
At least not in Kentucky.
Who could have predicted that? Over and over and over again, as we did.
Trump's proposal will likely trigger a legal battle, but even if it ultimately fails, valuable time will have been lost in the interim as polluting industries continue releasing carbon dioxide emissions that will warm the atmosphere for 1,000 years. Now, Trump is not the only leader abandoning climate action. On Monday, Australia's Conservative Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull announced that he is abandoning Australia's targets for reducing carbon emissions, bowing to pressure from his party's climate change denier lawmakers who threatened to hold a no-confidence vote if Mr. Turnbull followed through on introducing mild policies to curb greenhouse gas emissions. Meanwhile, the impacts of climate change are already here, from the unprecedented string of all-time high temperature records broken around the world this summer to a rash of deadly extreme rainfall events like in Kerala, India, which has received 40% more rainfall than average for this year in just a few weeks. That has triggered catastrophic flooding that's killed nearly 300 people and forced an estimated 800,000 people from their homes. Finally, a bit of good news, a small victory for public lands. The Interior Department's Bureau of Land Management late Friday canceled all plans to sell off land that has been stripped from Utah's Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument after a massive backlash from environmental groups and the public. So there's that.
So there's that. We'll take it. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
I'm gonna clean up the mess I made. Maybe it's not too late.
Your working class radio experience, where hard work, common sense, and rational thought are a reality. The Rick Smith Show.
Working hard to make a left, reach out a robbery. My father, son, left to carry on, blue denim, had his vein. Oh, he's a working class man.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So, as we've been talking about, for the last day and a half, you've got the Cohen thing, you've got the Manafort thing, the Duncan Hunter thing, you've got all the crime, the intrigue, the kleptocracy, all that stuff, the sexy, shiny stuff. But what are Democrats going to run on here in November and beyond? As we talked about earlier, what's going to make people's lives better? How are we going to make work pay? How are we going to make sure that kids get health care when they need it? Good education, safe neighborhoods, all of that stuff. Well, my next guest has a plan. It is there's a new group, new campaign, the We the People Pennsylvania Action Plan. That's why I've asked Marc Stier, director of the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center, to help share some of the thoughts on that plan forward and maybe help folks understand, how we're going to make people's lives just a little bit better. Marc, thanks for taking time for us.
My pleasure, Rick. Happy to be here.
So what's the plan? What's the We the People Pennsylvania Action Plan?
Well, let me just say two things first. We at the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center have been working on this campaign. And, we're a C3 organization, and we don't endorse candidates. We don't support candidates. But we've decided we need to move this plan into a little different realm. And so we've created We the People PA Action, which is a C4, which can take political stands and can endorse candidates or actually work to support candidates. And I'm here speaking on behalf of We the People PA Action. So this is a C4 gig. And what we've just recognized is something I think a lot of people around the state and around the country recognize, that, we may win some elections for people on our side just because they're sick of Trump and they're disgusted by what he's been doing. But we're not going to win enough unless we actually stand for something, unless we can say, this is what we want and this is what the country and the state needs. So we created this We the People PA Action as a way of making clear to people that this is what candidates who support this plan endorse and stand for and are going to work for once they hold office. And, it has 6 buckets: raising wages and creating good jobs, educating people at all levels from pre-K to college, providing necessities of life, from particularly health care, but also housing and making sure everyone gets a decent meal 3 times a day, infrastructure and the environment, fixing our roads and bridges and fixing our water systems and doing it in a sustainable way, fair taxes, making sure that everyone pays their fair share to pay for all of these things, and finally securing our democracy, making sure everyone has the right to vote, that our votes are counted equally, that our districts aren't gerrymandered, and that we break down barriers of race and gender to engagement in political life.
No.
And here's the good news. We've just started asking candidates to endorse this. 18 people running for a state legislature in Pennsylvania have already endorsed it, and this is a state-based campaign. And today I met with folks from the Democratic House leadership, and they're going to endorse this campaign, and we're going to have a big rally, and hopefully we're going to have 100 legislative candidates. Not all Democrats, but probably mostly Democrats, standing together on the steps of the Capitol in September saying, this is what we stand for, and this is what we're going to do.
Well, you went through your 6 buckets, and who can be against any one of those? We all want to have good jobs and good wages. We all want our children to get the best opportunities of education. We all want to make sure that if we get sick, we don't go broke. We want to make sure that people get 3 squares a day and a roof over their head. This all seems like like common sense stuff that shouldn't even have to be written down and discussed.
Well, it shouldn't have to be, but we have an administration in Washington that is cutting taxes for the rich and cutting benefits for working people in the middle class and for poor people every day. We have legislators running the General Assembly in Harrisburg who all they want to do is cut taxes and cut spending. They want to cut teacher salaries and then figure out how we're going to have decent teachers in our schools. They want to privatize our schools. They want to cut Medicaid, which people with low income and seniors depend on. You say this is something you should all support, but the fact is lots of people in this country in elective office, the Republican Party, do not support any of these things. And Democrats have to draw a contrast and have to say, this is where we stand. We stand with you, we the people, if they want people to vote for them. And we think people aren't going to take that stand. We think we're going to have a huge number of supporters, mostly from the Democratic side, but not entirely, who are going to say, yeah, we stand with we the people, and now you need to vote for us in November.
No, earlier we had a consultant on talking about, how Democrats should be running their campaigns and some of the messaging, especially after yesterday's first the guilty plea and then the jury finding Manafort guilty and then Duncan Hunter and all that, because the tendency would be let's attack Trump and the criminals over there instead of getting away from the bread and butter stuff that you're pitching. But I think what you're pitching is much more powerful and much more important.
I agree. I don't know what your consultant did, but look, there's a certain advantage in running against an administration that is just rotting from the top down in Washington.
As this one is.
As this one is. There's an advantage in running against Republicans who control the General Assembly that does nothing except they can only get their act together when it comes to cutting benefits for the poorest, most vulnerable Pennsylvanians. But that's not enough. I think if we really want people to come out and vote, if we want them to vote for Democrats, if we want them to vote for people who support this agenda, we need to say what it is we stand for. And we've kind of lost the ability to do that. We spend all our time attacking the other side, and there sure as hell is enough to attack. But it's not enough, I think, because you turn people off. People get disgusted with politics.
Right.
Unless someone gives them a positive vision of what we're really for. And that's what the We the People campaign is about. And I just can't tell you how gratified I am that so many candidates that I'm talking to, a lot of first-term time candidates, a lot of people who haven't been in office very long, as well as some of the leaders who recognize this and say, hey, we're with you. We're really going to move forward with you, and we're going to stand with you.
No, that's important. And if people want to check it out and sign your petition, I understand you have a petition that can be signed, wethepeoplepa.org/get involved. We'll make sure we get links out to that. You can also follow them on Facebook at PA We The People, and then follow on Twitter at PA We The People as well. But, you look at some of these things and, a secure democracy, that seems kind of large and kind of, what exactly do you mean by that?
First of all, it's got to be a lot easier for people to vote. We need to have early voting in this state. No questions about it. Absentee voting, voting by mail, I think would make a lot of sense. Anything we could do to make it easier to vote will empower people to create a government that actually serves them as opposed to serving the rich and the powerful. We got to get campaign contributions under control. We got to fix the gerrymandering problem. All these things that the General Assembly will not do, but could be done by a new majority that says, people elected us, now let's make sure people can stay in power. Because our government is so dominated, as you know, by the rich and the powerful, and people are fed up with that, and we need to change it.
Now, I always find it interesting. People tell me that they believe in term limits. I got tons of friends who are like, what we need really is term limits. And I go, but we already have term limits. You have the right to vote. Why is it we keep voting for the same bad incumbents who keep getting us the same bad results?
Because all anyone knows about is the incumbents. And you know what? This campaign is actually designed to attack that. Because, I've seen some polls that show that Democrats have a huge advantage in the state this year. But when you ask, do you want to vote for Democrats, do you want to vote for Republicans for state legislature? But when it comes down to the voting booth the last couple of weeks, people will say, well, I know this guy, he may be a Republican, but, he comes to our Rotary meeting, he comes to the Elks Club, I see him at weddings and funerals, he seems like a nice guy, and they don't connect this incumbent whose name they know with what's actually going on in Harrisburg. And we're really trying to combat that. We're trying to say you've got to vote not based on whether you like this guy or not, but based on who he empowers in Harrisburg. And a lot of those guys you like are empowering corporations. They're empowering the trackers. They're empowering the people who want to take benefits away from the working people in the state. They're empowering the people who want to undermine public education. And, he may be a nice guy, but he's on the wrong side. And the campaign is trying to tell people, vote for people who say, we stand with the people and we're on the right side. Forget about whether you've seen them at the Rotary Club or at the Elks Club.
Now, how are you rolling this out? How are you pitching this out? Is this strictly a candidate-based thing? Are you doing, some outreach? What are you doing with it?
Well, we're doing a couple of things. First of all, we're asking people to sign up because we want to get people say they support this agenda, and we're going to then, try to mobilize them, get them out to vote. We've got organizers going all over the state to find volunteers who want to canvass and to support this issue agenda. And we're signing up candidates who we're going to use digital means to tell people who these candidates are and boost that information. And do it not just at local districts, but around the state. We want to give people a sense that there's some real momentum behind this campaign, and that, there's a reason to come out and vote because there are people who are committed to change. And, we're going to do individual events with candidates. They're going to start rolling out next week. We're going to do some group events. We're going to do a big statewide event sometime in September on the steps of the Capitol with, I hope, 100 or more legislative candidates. And people will understand who's on the right side and who isn't when they see these events. And I hope that mobilizes people to come out and work for these candidates and to vote for them.
If you want to take a look at the petition, sign up the petition. The website, wethepeoplepa.org/get involved. Also check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/PA We the People. Also at PA We the People on Twitter as well. Lots of ways to contact. Marc, I wish you the best. I'd love to hear more as this continues. In fact, just the other day, I was talking with Art Hayward, senator from down in Philadelphia, who's really excited about this plan. So there's some buzz, and I'm excited for you.
Yeah, Art is a big supporter. He's going to help us recruit candidates, and I hope as people do these endorsements, you have him on. They can talk about why they support We the People and help build this momentum for this great campaign.
Good stuff, Marc. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rick. Thanks.
Good stuff, Marc Stier. He's the head of the C4 We the People Pennsylvania Action. Not going to throw out the other thing. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.
We're the first ones to die, the first ones in line for that pie in the sky, and we're always last when the creation of for the worker is working when the fat cats above. We're the first ones to stop, we're the first ones to die.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1980. That was the day that Joyce Miller became the first woman ever elected to the executive board of the AFL-CIO. In her 2012 obituary, the New York Times described Joyce's commitment to women's rights in the labor movement, writing, "Miss Miller saw union membership, collective bargaining, and labor contracts as the road to equality for working women, and she believed that women should be a part of union management to make sure that attention was paid to issues like equal opportunity, equal pay, parental leave, child care, health insurance, and discrimination in the workplace." Joyce grew up in Chicago, where she earned her master's degree in education from the University of Chicago. She first entered the labor movement as a worker at a gumball factory while attending college. After graduation, she became the education director for the Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union in Pittsburgh. She remained dedicated to union education for rank and file members. Joyce was a founding member of the Coalition of Labor Union Women, or CLU. She served as CLU's East Coast vice president, eventually being elected CLU's president in 1977, a position she would hold for 15 years. Under her leadership, CLU worked as a powerful voice for women's reproductive rights, improving child care, and increasing the number of women in union leadership positions. In 1993, President Bill Clinton named Joyce Miller the executive director of the Glass Ceiling Commission. The purpose of the commission was to gather testimony about women's experience in the workplace and to draft a report of their findings. Of her career, Joyce said, "I came to the labor movement with stars in my eyes. I saw it as a vehicle for social change, and I never changed my mind." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Life in the southern Indian city of Kerala is struggling to return to normal after monsoon rain sparked once-in-a-century flooding that claimed more than 300 lives. Thousands are still stranded by floodwaters, tens of thousands of homes are believed destroyed, and at one point over the weekend, 800,000 people have been displaced within city limits.
Kerala in general receives a lot of precipitations.
Mona Lisa Chatterjee is a lecturer in environmental studies at the University of Southern California and says Kerala's 35 million residents, particularly its poor, are used to seasonal rains. But when the monsoon stagnated over the city instead of moving elsewhere, there was little anyone could do.
If you go into the literature of, how environmental consequences are experienced and who experiences them mostly, It's mostly the low income, people who are impoverished, people who don't have any access to decision makers or do not have the resources to respond to these events. They've always been left out, and I'm not surprised to see this happening.
As rescue efforts wind down, finger-pointing has begun over how city officials could have responded differently. For one, while all of Kerala's 80 dams were overrun by rain, most weren't opened until they'd reached capacity, meaning downstream settlements were deluged with little warning. Chatterjee is glad policymakers and citizens are now wrestling with tough questions over how to brace for increasingly intense floods in the future. But had Kerala's wealthy not been affected by this year's rains, she's unsure that reckoning would have occurred.
It's just that because this event has sort of crossed a threshold and has started to impact a broader sort of community, that we start seeing that this is becoming more visible now, and people are talking about it as a disaster now, because these people have been dealing with this disasters every year anyways.
As recent U.S. surveys back up, climate change rarely seems urgent until it's staring you in the face. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
To this battle, take my union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery, for this war is one you're bound to lose. Are you fascists bound to lose?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, ricksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind. You can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. So, look, I like Marc's plan. I like the idea of running on issues of importance, like good jobs and good wages and strong unions. I like the idea of ensuring that that kids have opportunity of education from pre-K all the way up as far as their talents will take them, and not saddling them with a lifetime of debt. And what this is really about, and as I was thinking about it during the break, this is about rethinking, our entire country and rethinking the entire economy and kind of rebuilding things in the mold of our grandparents' generation. The idea that we had, good family sustaining jobs, and that every job was respected and rewarded for your work. We wanted an educated populace, so we paid our taxes and we made sure that public schools were well funded and people had opportunities to do numerous things and as far as they can go. And I've told the story before. I have a friend who went through the University of Michigan, worked a minimum wage job as a waitress, lived in a crummy apartment, had a broken down old car, but she graduated with no debt all the way through law school. Undergrad, all the way through law school, University of Michigan, came out the other side with no debt. Today, if you were to do that, you're talking a couple $100,000 in the hole. A lifetime of debt. So by saying, hey, look, we want to make sure that that our kids get opportunities, who can be against that? Other than Republicans, other than Scott Wagner here in Pennsylvania, who said we could fire 10% of the teachers and gut funding and all of that's actually flew over a school in his helicopter and said, look, everything looks fine down there. It doesn't need any more money. It looks fine. The grass is cut. The roof isn't leaking from up here. It's fine. Don't believe me? Look it up. That's the kind of mentality that you're going to get with somebody like Scott Wagner here in Pennsylvania. You think about, the basic necessities of life, food, housing, healthcare, the basic things. All of us, I think, if you're going to be a Christian nation, heal the sick, feed the hungry, give shelter to the homeless, clothe the naked, that stuff should be kind of maybe no-brainer-ish. Then you get into the public works stuff. We want good roads and bridges. We want, good public transit. We want good infrastructure. We want clean air and clean water. So we need, sewers and all that stuff. And not in a way that there's a huge profit motive on it. Seems sane and seems rational. The idea of a taxation system, kind of like the cave. Those with the bigger shoulders carry the most water. Those with the bigger paychecks pay a little bit more in taxes. the way it used to be. I mean, it's weird. Pennsylvania is one of these weird states where the poorer you are, the larger percentage of your income you pay in taxes. And in fact, I think it was the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center who pointed out that if you're in the lowest fifth quintile of income, you paid almost 13% of your income in taxes. But if you're in the top, if you're in that top fifth, you paid 3.5% to 4%. So if you're poor, you're paying 3 times as much as the guy at the top as a percentage of your income. Who thinks that's fair? Obviously, the guy at the top who's walking away with all kinds of money, but not the rest of us. So having a sane and rational tax code, I think, is something we should be looking at on the federal level. And I would even argue maybe even just think about the Eisenhower tax code, or even the Kennedy one, or even the one that Reagan had when he took office. Just kind of a thought. And also the one that I think is most important, and that is a secure democracy. The sanctity of the ballot box completely restored, our faith in our vote being counted and mattering, an absolute. And I think that has to come with a paper trail. There's just no way around it. I don't care if you do it with the electronic machines that spit out the paper. I don't care how you do that, but that's the vote. And I had somebody email me like they had never heard this. What a fantastic idea! You should be running on this. It's common sense. When I go to the ATM, I put my card in, it spits my card out, it spits out a piece of paper. It says, hey, this is what you did. This is how much you took. This is how much you added in. This is what you got left. It's all right there. Pretty simple. We've already got the machinery that could do it. It's not even a far reach. We could easily do that with these electronic voting machines. Because, hey, we have to know we're an instant society. We're a McDonald's society. We got to worry about I got to know now. Can't wait till morning. I can't fall asleep and not know. So what you do is you tabulate the votes on the machines, and then the next day you get people in there going 1 little vote, 2 little votes, 3 little votes, 4 little votes. Seems sane and rational to me. So all in all, I think this is an agenda across the board. If you're running for something in any place, this is a good place to start. I think they've done a nice job, and I hope folks will take a look at their website, sign their petition at wethepeoplepa.org/get-involved. And isn't that the key to all of this stuff? You want to change the world? You do it by changing your little piece of it first. You want to change society? You do it by making sure that your little piece of it is as good as it can possibly be, so that the next guy in the town over goes, hey, I want that. And maybe they'll do it too. Just kind of a thought. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go for your entertainment, enjoyment, and all that. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's coming like the tide of flood beneath the lunar